thing that I like to do with my brass is I like to take my brass out and I lay it on a little towel. And then whichever method of lubricant that I choose to use, I'm going to go ahead and lube these cases now. At this point, I'm going to take the previously lubed brass, or it might not be lubed, but I'm going to insert it into the shell holder, and I'm going to raise the ram and push the brass upward all the way through the die. And what this does is this resizes the die, and if the case still had a primer in it, it would have popped the old primer out. So I'm going to do this, I'm going to repeat this process with all of my brass. Okay, right now I'm in the process of trimming these 50 rounds, and I thought of something that I didn't want to miss, I didn't want to forget. And first thing is I'm just trimming all these in one motion, and then I'll deburr them and chamfer them in a second motion. Okay, now that my brass is all resized, I want to put a bullet in, okay, but I can't do it obviously because there's no primer, no powder, but you can't get a bullet into the case because these are straight wall cases. So on pistol cartridges, the next step of the operation is to what they call bell the case mouth, or expand the case mouth. And what that process is when you take the walls of the cases, you're basically flaring them out a little bit like so that the bullet can come into the case, okay? And so that's the next step of the operation, is what we refer to as belling the case mouths. One thing that I want to mention about these 45 Long Colt cases is that they don't have a big lip on the bottom. The lip is small on the bottom. They're not like a 44 mag or a 357 mag where they have a large lip. They have a small lip. So if you get something caught in a die and you try to lower the ram, there's a good chance that you could break off the lip of these cases. So be careful how much downward pressure you put on the ram of your press, pulling the case downward out of the die. So right now I'm just case mouth expanding. Okay, so here we come. I'm putting the primer into the cup. Raise the ram a little bit. Insert the case into the shell holder and slowly push forward. Looking at the primer, checking to see how it's seated, and it looks good. Let's do that again. Put the primer into the cup, make sure it has an anvil. Put a piece of brass in and push forward. Nice, smooth operation. You see me running my finger along it, and the reason I do that is because I'm feeling to see how well seated the primer is. This does not take a lot of pressure. It's a very easy process. Nothing hard about it at all. So again, here's another look at the operation. I've got my scale. I turn my scale on. This is the case that I want to charge. I'm going to set that case down. I'm zeroed. I come throw a charge. I put it on the scale, 8.6. Here's my funnel. Here's my powder. There we go. Now we're ready to rock and roll again. And what else is nice about these is if you're going to be loading your loads within a spectrum like we are, you can load them right around 8.4, 8.5, and it won't get outside of those parameters unless something goes haywire. I've never seen one do that because they throw by volume. So that's a good option for measuring your powder. I really like this option. Highly recommend it. Looks good. So the last thing that I like to do is I like to inspect the bullets, and I'm loading them from one block to another, and I've got a small rag in my hand, and I'm basically removing any residue that's on the brass. I'm feeling with my fingers, I'm looking visually at the roll crimp, I'm looking at the primers to make sure the primers are seated well, that they're not bulging out or anything like that. And if they pass the inspection, I put them in the next loading block, and if they don't, I set them aside and I might pull the bullets out of them and save the contents.